Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to late Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religion. And this week we have MacTheHuman. Mac, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Good to see you. Hi, everybody. I think I saw back in the comments. Hey, back. And to everybody that'll see this in the future. So, I've been kind of developing questions for today, and I was touching base in the kind of the beginning parts of the Book of Revelation, and I thought maybe we could kind of do a classic episode where we're just kind of looking at the Bible and picking it apart a little bit. But first, I wanted to clarify something, and I wish that I had been up to date on your conversation with MathPig about this book, because you two are getting real granulated with it, and it's great, but it's a lot of information. So I have to admit, I haven't spent the time with it to explore all the content. But there's something kind of big picture that I want to establish, which is, so I understand that in your reading frame, the whole Scripture and all Scripture is almost all Scripture is describing future events, and of course. Traditionally, this book is considered to be doing that as well, but it's also considered to be written by this fellow John, who's stuck on an island, imprisoned on an island, I think, and who's having a vision and trying to faithfully record the vision. Mm-hmm. My question is that authorship story, does that track for you? Like, is that a fine way to say how the book came about? Or, because I've heard you say before that Scripture was really written, composed by angels that have seen it happen before, and not people who are, not necessarily people who are seeing the future.
Mm-hmm.
If you get my distinction, yeah,
I think so. If I say something stupid, you just let me know, okay? If it doesn't
cool.
answer to you, and that's always a possibility, because my brain is not your brain,
Right.
and there's really nothing I can do about that. I mean, I can try to understand
Yeah.
you, but we're two different humans. And probably the best argument against solipsism is that very fact, that I don't understand things the way that you understand them. Okay, so fundamentally, I've said, for some decade now, that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, for instance, each had their own experience at the end of their earth.
Okay.
And they were apostles to the Christ. Peace and respect, Harple Blues and Odine. And John is no exception to that. Paul is no exception to that. Is it necessarily so that they all were on the same earth at the same time, having the same experience? Actually, it's necessary that they were from different earths. So what you have is it's time for the end of an earth. The end of that earth happens. They ascend into heaven. They're told to write down their story immediately. And then when it's time to hand out the religion, when that next earth is formed, and the one they go to after that, that next earth is ready to receive religions. Like the people of the earth, they've gotten organized enough. They're Gregorian enough. They have some time to sit down. They're not always just hunter-gatherer constantly.
Right.
They've got some organization to them, and they're ready to receive a religion. Or they're good enough at hunting and gathering that they can receive a religion, whichever way that works. Then they take, let's say we're Earth. This sounds confusing. I'm so sorry. These are weird ideas. Let's say that we're Earth number, we're the Jews in the ancient Near East, and it's time to give us religion. And it's getting on toward it's going to soon be the beginnings of Christianity, which is a separate people from the Jews, and they needed their own thing.
Right.
Okay. So really, it's that the society became too diverse, and they couldn't understand it the same way, and they needed their own religion, so it was given to them. Okay. So it's that time frame. So we're Earth number 24. So Christ number 23, he's got his recollection of the end of his earth. Okay? And that's the letters of Paul. That's the writings of Paul. And he says, okay, it's time for us to compile the Bible for these people. And this one's going to include the New Testament. So I'm going to need John from Earth number 22. I'm going to need Matthew from Earth number 21. And I'm going to need, the guy who we would call Mark from Earth number 20.
Luke, yeah.
And Luke from number 19. And I'm gonna take all those, I'm gonna put them, that's gonna be the New Testament, and we've got John the Revelator as well. Okay. So I think John the Revelator, in the word Patmos and what it means, is from a perspective of heaven. And heaven being such a big thing and a big idea, I think Patmos is the earth.
Okay.
Which he is a prisoner on the earth. There's no two ways about it. And he's a prisoner for all the right reasons and everything that it says in the text.
Right.
But it's talking about how we're separated from heaven, and heaven is the larger thing that it's written from, and from their perspective. So from their perspective, we're on this little tiny island. And we're imprisoned there, and we're slaves, and we have no choice. And it's more about mental imprisonment than physical. Well, we're physically imprisoned too because we can't leave.
Right.
That's
true.
Not in any real big numbers. We're not leaving. Right. So it is purposefully written in a very mystical kind of a acid trip kind of way.
Yeah.
And I think people see that easily. I think the reason for that is because it's so informationally dense and it reveals so much that if people could understand it, they wouldn't have a choice about what these different religions are saying, and that they are all saying the same thing. Now, I've been shown enough to say, oh, I see that all the religions are saying the same thing, and that it's written as an acid trip, but it's not, and such like that. So, a huge blessing for me personally, and I think and why I think I'm supposed to share it with others is because it's much more than I need. It's huge and immense, and okay, So John is a bystander. He represents the confusion of the people during those times, and that they don't immediately see that what's going on around them is the fulfillment of their religion. And I think that's the perspective of it, and that's why it's written that way.
Okay.
And ultimately, the pontificator, he needs to understand it fully, like completely, and all the rest of us were left some amount of confusion so that we can have free will. Peace and respect, end times teacher. We'll bring that up in a minute. He's got something to say there. We'll figure. But I want to hear what you think about that and the stupid parts.
Well, I will dispute a little bit that the acid trip sort of characterization, because what I have seen is some very almost superficial descriptions of, maybe more blatant and on point according to your reading frame and the stuff you've told me about Leviathan and stuff like that. They're almost like mechanical descriptions of what
to me describe. They are.
Yeah. So I was I started today in reading Revelation 10, but then I got to 11 where John's asked to get a measuring rod and start measuring heaven. And then 11:2 he says, but don't measure the court outside the temple, which would be the folks that haven't gotten on board yet, right?
Right, that's what that would, yes, very good.
So I just picture John being directed toward measuring this immensely complicated, beautiful object that no one has ever appreciated before. But then he turns and he says, oh, but what about these people? What about what's going on over here? This is awful. Shouldn't we pay attention to this? It's almost like he gets stuck, like he gets distracted there. And then the angel needs to sort of explain what's going to happen with them.
Right.
And it's
So that
awful.
should tell you when John ascended.
Well, after that, I guess.
Okay, so he can see the court outside of the city,
Yeah,
and he can measure the city.
right.
And from his perspective, he's saying, what about those outside the city? Which means he's inside the city.
I sort of pictured him more as like approaching the city and getting
Oh,
ready
good,
to go inside.
good enough.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Yeah,
Okay, so that puts him at ascension or past ascension.
right.
That's where that puts him.
Right there, yeah.
And he's to describe the city, right? Measure it, judge it. It's literally judging.
Right,
That's what we do when we measure something, is we are literally
Evaluate, yeah.
physically judging it. Yeah.
right.
And he says, well, what about those outside the city? He says, don't judge them. Don't measure them. Don't quantify them. Don't do that.
They're doing
Because
their
they're
own
not
thing.
done.
They're the Gentiles.
Yeah,
For is given unto the Gentiles.
right. And and they will trample the city, blah blah blah, months, and that month's right there. If it says months, it's going to say 42. If it says days, it's going to say 1,203 score or
Okay.
1260. Or if it says years, it's going to say 3.5. And that's consistent because it's talking about the second half of end times. So John takes the ascension, he judges or measures the city. He goes, well, this is what it is, and I accept what it is, and I'm okay. So he's taking ascension there, and he says, what about those I'm leaving behind? And I think the angels reassuring him, saying, don't worry about them. They're not finished. We still have, and then right after that, it's going to go into Christ and the 144,000 and how they are going to go down there and take care of that, and that's why that has to be right there in the text, because
Well,
it's at the halftime show.
People blowing fire out of their mouths and
The two witnesses, yeah,
beasts coming out of the bottomless pit and
sure,
all kinds of
all the stuff, yeah,
stuff happens right after that. Yeah.
right, which makes perfect sense because it's.
Right. 'Cause that's
I mean,
the
a lot of
rough
people
time,
will
yeah.
argue with me over the accuracy of my assertion that this is in chronological order. I believe it's in chronological order. It makes no sense otherwise, and it works well in chronological order. So I have to say, well, by default at least. Thanks, Hillary's email. Yes, I do occasionally dye my hair because I just don't like the gray, and I do it as an honor to Christ, although I'm not sure this is perfectly his hair color.
I think you trimmed it a
it's-
little too, didn't you?
It's something red. No,
Did you shape it a little? No? Oh.
no, that's against the rules.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know.
You don't trim the corners of your beard. Yeah, when someone says to me, "Yeah, I'm following the law," I first thing I'm going to do is look at their chin and see if they're shaving. Are you following the law? Because you're not. Okay. Yeah, I have accepted that I puked, and I'm no longer in denial of that. End Times teacher, whom I debated on JG's channel, it is copied to this channel as well, wrote, "Hey Richard, we need to do a stream on the age of consent for marriage. I believe it's 8 years old, and nobody else can prove me otherwise." Ignoring the sentence structure, I think it depends on where and when you grew up. Because, say, in the United States today, we say the age of consent is 18, but we also allow young males and females to repress their natural growth into adulthood. We do that on purpose. We want to keep them in school, and moms are moms, and they don't want the kid to leave the house. So as time goes by, you end up with higher and higher ages of what's an adult. In this very moment on the earth, though 18 is the age of consent in the United States, what is it in Germany. In Germany, you can belly up to the bar at 13 years old. Get yourself a beer. Yeah. 13-year-olds. Yeah, that's old enough. Got money,
Well,
son? Go ahead.
after a long day of reading Hegel or whatever they do in Germany at 13, need a beer or two.
If you are growing up in some parts of the poorest, the worst parts of Africa, you are already doing adult work. Cooking meals, fetching water, taking care of livestock. By the time you're probably 8 or 9 years old. So, what's an adult? An adult is someone who's got the physical and mental capacity to act as an adult, and they do act as an adult. So, I think 8 years old, dependent on your definition of what an adult is, or an age of consent for marriage, I think 8 might be disputable. Here's why. It is not normal and average, since we're speaking in great averages and generally, it's not an accurate average to say that a female's body is an adult at 8. I don't think so. That would be kind of weird, actually. Now, maybe where there's hormones being injected into the city water system, and girls are pubing earlier and earlier because there is nothing in the city water system to break down hormones that people are taking for whatever reasons, trying to get pregnant, trying to ease their what's that word when you stop menstruating? Help me out, Mac.
Menopause.
Menopause, trying to ease their symptoms of menopause, or for whatever reasons, whatever drugs they're taking, and children are consuming it. It seems evident to me that girls are pubing earlier and earlier, but that's not natural. Also, boys are growing up with big hips. Also not natural, but only in these high density areas where there's a lot of city infrastructure. Is that happening? It's not happening everywhere. Okay. That's all I would say about that. I disagree with you, end times teacher, in general, because I think that what you're talking about is special cases and not an average, but you're using it as an average, and that's flawed. On the other hand, in some countries, if they're poor enough and dad's at work and mom's dead, there's 6-year-olds doing adult work. So
that's just how, that's right. And their countenance is that of an adult. They don't seem like children when they
they don't
live
talk
lives
like children.
that.
They don't think like children. They haven't learned very much because they're very young.
Right.
But mentally, cognitively, they're doing adult things with their brain. They got jobs and stuff. Not that in those parts of the world the jobs are hard to learn.
Right.
They're not doing computer science.
Right.
Peace and Respect Gaming with Silverwolf. Okay. Back to the book of Revelation. Okay, so here's what I think goes on. From the very first earth ended, the first Bible ever, or sets of religions for that earth, the first one would have only spoken about heaven's arrival and give hero as he needed, but it wouldn't have contained a history of past things because there wasn't one.
Right. Sure.
Right? And then ever since then, religion set 2 had one example. Religion set 3 had 2 examples. Religion set 4 had 3 examples. We're all the way up to how many gospels do we actually have now? Some people say there's over 100.
Right. Depends which ones you count.
Right.
Yeah.
And canonically we have at least 4.
Right.
Okay, so where are we at in that process? It's pretty advanced by now, but I think it's the same ending of every earth because the angels conduct it, not the people on the earth. Or if the people of the earth conducted it, it would be very different.
Sure.
Yeah. Holes in the thought process that you see, Mac. Go ahead, man.
Well, I usually, at this point, when I examine your thought process as best I can, hey, Math Pig, I start to wonder about its relevance for me. I start to think, I get like intellectual stimulation out of considering it, but it's a similar sort of position that I'm put in by, I guess, by the universalist point of view, where like essentially I'm along for the ride, and there's nothing I can do, there's nothing to do, really.
Right.
Like it's not speaking to me. So, but okay, then why do I love it so much? Why do I vibe with the Word of God? Why does there why is there energy there? I know you hate language like that, but
No, it's okay.
yeah. I read Revelation in very small pieces because it really shakes me. Like even the two chapters that I read today, I think I'm going to be contending with some emotion from that, the rest of the day.
Sure.
Sadness, an awe kind of a feeling. But
Sadness for whom?
I'm not sure. It's just like this heavy sadness, like maybe for the author that's going through that. Maybe, um, you know, for the destruction being described. Um, I know that it's momentary. I know that suffering in general is temporal by its nature, but I don't know, brother. I think it seems like the last few weeks, personally, there's been a lot of tragedy, sort of, or in my kind of immediate perspective, and it's tough to contend with. It's tough to kind of contextualize in some kind of spiritual understanding, so that I'm not sad about it. Yeah. So, and then I read about tragedy being described on this level, like on a global level, and there's that is a sad thing for me.
It should be.
I love this world. I have love for the world. I have love for the people in it, and the way the way we interact and the way we help each other, and the relationships we're allowed to form, and all of that. Like it's so.
I think the compulsion is there on purpose, primarily for the hero, not that people can't glean something from it, or that they shouldn't glean something from it. Although I do believe that all but the hero are excused of any responsibility, and I think that's evident. Okay? But in our empathy for other human beings, we read this and we say, we personalize it and say, if it were me, and how would they feel? And what would that mean to them in that moment? And good for you, because you're talking about empathy for others, your own kind, other
Yeah.
human beings. And that's beautiful. And you should have that. And if you don't have some level of that, you're a psychopath.
Right.
So it's better than being a psychopath. So here's how that pans out. There are people on this earth who will experience the first half of end times and not yet have seen heaven, and they have no real way to take their story that is traditional to their people, and perhaps they don't even have the idea that it should be flipped over into reality and was told as a fairy tale. And let's say you met one person who, was obviously able to speak the same language that you're speaking now, or one language that you know, because I don't want to personalize this too much to you, Mac, but, and you guys are able to communicate, and you can say to them, because you've heard of this idea, you can say to them, have you ever looked at your religion as being a fairy tale to be decoded now? Have you looked at it that way? And if you look at your religion from your people and you look at it as these events are clarifying what those stories meant. And I would recommend not being insulting by using the exact term fairy tale, but I'm speaking to you right now. Have you looked at it that way, and what would that result in? Maybe they never thought of that.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Maybe the Christian who goes, no, we're going to be, two people are harvesting grain, and one will disappear and the other one will be left behind harvesting grain. They'll just poof out of existence, like literally. And that's what the text is talking about. That's the story. I know, because I know my Bible.
Right.
And I would, in that situation, I would say to them something. Say, yes, it literally says that. But it also says this and this, ascended up into the clouds and Jacob's ladder, and it also says this stuff. So how literal should you take it? Maybe it was being put kind of vaguely, so that you can have these kind of semi-contradictory or even contradictive ideas, so that when it happened, that could be corrected.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And if I do that in that moment for someone when they are very, very confused, and by the way, the Bible predicts this happening in real time to real people, and not just the hero. If that were the situation and I did that well for someone, then I have given them my rationale for why I'm okay, right? And why they should be okay in this. And if they're able to recall their stories, whatever religion they come from, and understand that this is the fulfillment of their prophetic stories, then they'll be okay too. In fact, it will give them faith in what's going on. Right?
Right.
Peace and respect, Wild Hearts PP. So, the text reads, always be prepared to give a rationality, a reason for the hope that is within you. Who is that talking to? It's talking to someone who has hope. When? It's talking to them when they have hope and no one around them does. When would that be? That would be when everyone is very, very confused and thinking they're dying or they're going to die soon. They have no hope, no faith. They got nothing. So
sounds like now.
And I don't do this very often, but I'll say it right now, and I'm only going to say it once, and I'm not going to say it very often. Who the hell do you think you are? What do I think these conversations are about? I believe we are those who will be in those individual situations saying, look, have hope. You're going to be okay. Your religion already taught you this. And I think that's why this information is here, and why it's to be distributed, and why it's not mine, and why it's for everyone. And this, 540 so subscribers who've heard this, or maybe they went across MathPig's channel, or maybe they heard this being talked about on Skylar Fiction or Raging Atheist or whatever. I think those people are going to be in the position, the rational position, that they understand what's going on and that they'll be okay, and they'll be able to extend that to others. And I think that's going to be really important. So, do I right now read these things and I feel a heaviness for those people in that situation? Yes, I do. And should I? Yes, I should.
Right.
And that's humanitarian, and that's love and understanding. That's what that is. Empathy. And I hope all of you feel some heaviness too. I do.
But there's hope.
But there is hope. See, Mac, what you're talking about right now, I could say it this way. And I ate of the little scroll, and in my mouth it was sweet as honey, and in my belly it was bitter. That's what you're telling me.
Wow. Yeah.
It means you're eating the little scroll.
I was going to ask about that.
should have let you lead.
That's okay. That's cool. It's just a good, if nothing else, that's a good image of the gigantic angel with a little tiny scroll.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, I think the angel there is the angel of God. It's him who is sitting on the throne. In the case of the Son, that means the Father. In the case of anyone else, it might mean the Father or God or my guardian angel. It could mean almost anything,
Huh.
and that's absolutely fine. And that it is that which clarifies, you know. Skyworks, have I made you've been one of the Upright Citizens Brigade. Let's go ahead and make you a mod. And feel free to post that thing you're talking about there.
Yeah, thanks.
Skyworks,
So-
you and I don't agree on these topics, but you have been honest and forthcoming, and you have been a decent human being, so I trust you until you tell me I can't. Go ahead. Floor's yours, sir.
Oh, well, no, I mean, I was just thinking I was reflecting on, this idea of, unlocking the people's ideas of religion and applying it to a very confusing time and offering them comfort that way. I was thinking about that, and I was thinking that that's justification for studying scripture now, so that's an easier
Yes.
process. All scripture. So it feels like an indulgence sometimes, but
Which way are you using the word indulgence?
like it. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading scripture and it's just like a pure personal, pleasure kind of a thing, and it's not
Okay.
for anybody but me. That kind of indulgence. It's just like I do it because I like doing it, that does tend to be true about all other sacred text as well for me.
Just want you to know that I read them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll subscribe to your channel and check that out. The more people Richard interacts with, and sometimes I feel like I'm not the most dynamic interlocutor Richard has, but the more diverse people he speaks to, the cooler it gets. So I'm always down
Yeah,
for a new channel.
I had this guy that called himself Ed. He's from northeastern Europe somewhere. He has a pretty thick accent. He's brilliant. He's a materialist,
Okay.
and he ran down my truth theory, the theory of truth that I've adopted and accepted to see if I'm consistent. And that was an interesting thing. That was on the last. It was following a show with MathPig, and we opened that up, and that show lasted like 8 hours. It's like the
Oh, wow.
8-hour video, and he
Awesome.
starts it out by going, "What do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of that?" I had a great time.
That's great.
How do you reckon this? How do you reckon this? And he just kept going like that for pretty good, solid, like I don't know, more than 5, less than 10 minutes or something like that. It was big. I love that. That's big fun.
Was he satisfied?
I don't mind honest. If someone honestly attacks me, I'm fine.
Right.
I'm absolutely okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, MathPig's pretty ruthless with you. You guys
Right
know
on.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's all about honesty. I agree. It's I don't have no time for dishonest folk. This train don't pull no liars.
Right on. Yeah, I don't have time for dishonesty. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unprogressive. It's worse than just not progressive. It's unprogressive.
Right.
Right. Okay, we
feel like
need
we're running
another
out of
topic
steam.
because that was only a half hour.
Yeah, we're running out of steam on that. um, let's see, where do we go?
So, people experiencing this, what the Christians call end times, which is properly the great day of the Lord, also the great day, also in that day,
Hmm.
also the day at hand. All of those terms in the text, the Christian text, mean the same thing. Um, will be at first very upset and confused. Now, when I say at first, I mean the first 3.5 years of it.
Okay.
And that means a lot of people really emotionally distraught for a long enough time that it has become, intrinsically part of them that they are distraught.
Okay.
If you can imagine that.
I mean, again, sounds like now. It's very similar to the
You know,
situation I see around me.
if I take the 7
Normalizing
years of end
distress.
times, yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
If I take the 7 years of end times, and Brother Mathpig is good at pointing this out. He says, look, you're saying the ends justify the means, and you're okay with end times, but it sounds horrible and upsetting, and people die, and we start killing each other, and it gets bad, and it gets really bad. And all of this is because the oppressive acts of those in heaven. And he's right. But in whatever community I live right now, or whatever community any of you live in right now, or consider those in other parts of the world, because not everything is America, Americans.
Right. Yeah.
Hate to tell you, there's other land masses. Really, I'm not kidding.
Lots of
Um,
people.
and we in the United States are extremely privileged. Throughout all of North America, extremely privileged. Like crazily, the Canadians, the United States citizens, very privileged compared to most of the world. If you're in Europe, you're very privileged, and you had nothing to do with it. It's just where you were born into.
Hmm.
And there's parts of the world that are very tough and very, they're living like 10,000 years ago, and that's real. Um, of the 7 years of extreme, and I'm saying it's extreme, you know,
Yeah.
of that 7 years, how many years of my environment suffering on a regular basis, the kinds of ways that I suffer in my environment or other people suffer in their environment, how many would it take to equal those out, to balance them? How many? How many years? Perhaps end times in suffering is equivalent in my life where I live and the kind of life that I have. Maybe that's equivalent to like a good 40 years worth of suffering.
Sure.
Okay. And maybe, if you're in one of those 3 towns in Africa where their main form of trade and nutrition is clay, and they eat dirt cookies,
Right.
and that's their trade. They buy a little salt to add to it, so a person has enough salt in their diet, and they're eating mineral cookies all the time, and that's their main staple food. And everyone
Jeez.
is constantly constipated. But I mean, they're alive, but they ain't living well, and they're mining it out of the dirt.
Hmm.
Yeah, they're down there with sticks, and sometimes a shovel, or sometimes a pickaxe, and they're mining this clay out of the soil to live,
Wow.
and that's what they do. How much of their average life suffering
Right.
equals 7 years of that? It might be a 1-to-1 ratio, man.
Right.
Like maybe they're living in that kind of. We see people dying all the time.
Right.
We see people starve to death all the time. We're trying to have babies and keep up and get enough of those babies to survive that our tribe doesn't die out, and we can barely manage that all the time.
That's about as bad as it gets. Yeah.
But even if it was 200 years worth of suffering in just 7 years,
Right.
if that's the end of all human suffering, how long have humans suffered?
Right.
Well, apparently something like, I don't know,
The whole time.
the whole
Yeah.
time, and all of us
Yeah.
at some level of suffering.
Yeah.
What's 7 years?
Right. That's true. That's the bird's eye view. Yeah.
And I go, yeah, that's 7 years sounds like, compared to all that, it sounds like a cakewalk. I mean, the best we could do in the day of Darwin is that if you had 10 kids, you might get 2 of them to adulthood. That wasn't that long ago,
That's true.
and that wasn't the worst part of the world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty new. Everything's really new. This many people on the planet's really new. Suburbs are new. They're within the last 60 years, suburbs, which seem like you could take them for granted. They're everywhere, at least in the
Yeah.
United States. I don't know if it's...
Here, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But they're new. It's a new idea. Urbanization in general. And, concentrating manufacturing and living into the same area. That was never, for most of human history, that was never the way we did things.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's all like... just built into it. Normalized suffering, normalized strife. That's really,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's really what we're looking at. It's interesting. Hey, this is off topic, but there was an old idea that I ran across ran across again recently that I wondered if you'd heard of before, which is so there's a lot of very primitive spiritual stories where
Sure.
where the angels or the teachers or whatever rise up out of the sea. And I came across this idea that in ancient times, the sea and the sky would look like the same entity. To to somebody living on the shore of the ocean, for instance, especially at nighttime,
Sure.
there'd be no distinction between rising out of the sea or descending out of the sky. I just thought that was kind of cool.
I want to get a decent object to do this. That's pretty apparent. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll do it over here. Okay, so let's say that this was, trying to do this correctly. Let's say that this was pointing east.
Okay.
Okay. And then Eden is westward.
Okay.
Let's put Eden right there. Right. I wish I had an Earth. I'm gonna get a little toy Earth.
Yeah.
To do this kind of thing with. And let's say that the approach of heaven is from the east toward the earth. But what if I live over here?
Right. Right. You don't see it.
Okay. I wouldn't see it. But then they do their whole surround the whole earth thing, where you've got like all of this going on.
Oh, that is cool. I haven't seen that.
You got them
before.
like descending to the earth, right?
Nice.
On their approach, and I put it over Africa, but it doesn't really matter.
Right.
So from this perspective, when they spread out and go like this all around the earth, they just came out of the ocean.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would come right over the horizon like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I took all, now you got me thinking, if I took all of the ancient stories saying where the gods ascend out of, and if that is all actually one story, I should come up with what
Where the-
country is facing east when it happens. What
That's
continent
wild.
is facing east when it happens.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, did I say that thoroughly enough for everybody's brain? Okay, so if heaven arrives from this direction and then spreads out and encapsulates the earth, to this guy right here, they came up out of the ocean, because it's ocean that's, say east of them, right? To this guy who's got a really big landmass, and he just sees land, he doesn't see ocean this way. to them, they came up, over the horizon of the ground. You wouldn't think they came out of the ground. It wouldn't look like that to you. At least that's not how your brain would perceive that. Skyworks, I did make you a mod, but whatever you do is fine. Did I say that well enough? I can't tell.
I don't know that. Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, I I get what you're saying.
Okay,
Uh,
so
half the
the
time we
Australian
see,
story,
yeah.
the Australian story. So let's say Australia's right there, right? And let's say America's over here, and we got
Okay. Yeah.
United States here and Australia there, right? The Australian story says that oh boy, we could extrapolate this and go way too far with this, way too easy. Says that the heaven or the great serpent in the sky comes up out of a lake. That's one of the stories, which it's not a universal story to all tribes.
Oh,
The
interesting.
Aboriginals in Australia, they have different stories, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
But the ones that are pretty far inland, they say that it jumps from lake to lake.
Oh.
Okay, so they have a body of water in Australia. It's some pretty good sized bodies of water in Australia that to those people would be on the horizon, right? And it says the snake comes up out of one and it curves over and is touching the other lake, and it's because
Oh.
a certain event happens that disturbs the spirits.
Oh, interesting.
And the giant rainbow serpent comes up out of the lakes. Let's see, where is the story where they come up out of the water? You do have like the idea of Poseidon and Dagon, right? The ocean
That's
gods.
right. Yeah.
And that comes from that's the Norse people.
Dagon is the real old one. That's Sumeria.
That's Sumeria.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there were like fish people kind of associated with that too. The Phoenicians had ancient stories of fish people coming up out of the sea.
Okay, so that's the Near
Poseidon,
East.
Yeah, Poseidon would have been Greek, I guess. Yeah.
Poseidon is Greek. Okay. And where do the gods come from in Norse mythology? I'm trying to triangulate this.
They have a heaven. They have a sky thing.
They have a
It's
sky.
like-
Okay, the Chinese
yeah.
have the dragons descending from the sky.
Okay.
Native
Yeah.
Americans are so varied.
They have both. Out of the ground.
They have
out
both.
Yeah. out
No,
of
no,
the
no. They
sky.
have people coming up out of the ground, but no gods.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
As
the
far
gods,
as I
think-
know, I can't cover all of them.
Of course.
So a lot of the Native American culture, the description is written from heaven. That like the Christian expression was written from the the perspective of heaven, and people are like separated, although they naturally belong there.
Sure.
So they come up out of the earth, or ascend, or rapture, that kind of an idea, because it's written from
Gotcha.
that perspective off the earth.
Okay. I need to read more native.
But I should be able to, if I looked at all of those and where they actually are on the actual globe. Sorry, it's not a flat Earth.
Right.
I should be able to triangulate which continent is facing east at the arrival. I should be able to figure that out. It's going to take some research.
Which would be fun. Maybe not that helpful, but kind of fun.
It's not really all that helpful. And here's the part where I decline. And okay, I'm being experimental right now. Right?
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
know.
willing to plant my flag on this hill that I'm about to say. But it seems most appropriate that heaven's dissension be over the head of Christ.
Okay. That makes sense.
Which means, and this is going too far, I know it's going too far, but just for fun, we might be able to figure out where the Christ is.
Oh,
And that's going too far.
interesting. Okay. I kind of like, there's sort of a poetry for being over Africa, you know? where humanity originated.
Hmm.
So
There's
it'd
a
be
certain
kind of
poetry
nice.
in that.
Yeah, nice symmetry. That'd be cool. So I like that your shirt's got it that way. But that's interesting, man. Anyway, we're gonna know where he is when he wants us to. So
I would experimentally say that wherever he is when people are judged. That's where they'll be taken to him. Wherever he is, that's where
okay,
judgment will happen. That's what I think. It seems
interesting.
appropriate to me. I mean, it's completely experimental. But just like he's the first one to step into our heaven,
Right.
and that although the angels built heaven and although they've been like maintaining it and stuff, they have no right to it. And the first one righteous step foot is Christ's foot.
Hmm.
See, I have weird thoughts like, will he have to stutter step so he makes sure that his right foot enters first? Or will it be just like really natural, casual timing and it'll just work out that way?
Right. Interesting. He'll know exactly how many steps to take to end up on his right foot. Well,
I've seen amazing things happen in my life to make a point to other people who are around me in the moment.
right.
I've seen just amazing stuff.
Right. Way more.
Downtown, small town, main road through town, uh, right before rush hour Friday night where everyone's going to head out to the bars, and it should have already started, but it hadn't started, and there's no other cars on the street, and all the lights turn green, so two Mormon boys can go, holy crap, this is real. For 7
Wow.
lights in a row all the way through town.
Wow.
Like all the lights turned green.
Oh, those poor boys.
I brought it home for them, man. It brought it
I'll
home
bet.
for them. They were like, holy crap, this God thing ain't a joke, is it?
Right. Huh.
One of them, it really struck his heart. And the other one kind of went, nuh-uh, nuh-uh, nuh-uh.
Right.
He kind of like repeated that. In fact, he repeated it too much, like he needed to say nuh-uh.
Sure.
Yeah.
I really enjoy talking to those Mormon missionary boys when I have a chance. They're very sincere, or
They
they
are.
tend to be. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can't say 100% about 100% of the people, but
Of course, yeah, but I've had good experiences speaking to them. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool seeing people dedicated to their faith like that. I
the
mean,
only problem that I have is when your proof is internal.
hmm,
There's
that's their
nothing
big
about
thing.
your experience internally that your brain can't generate.
That's true.
Like your brain can give you a heart attack, or it can keep your heart beating on a really nice steady pace. Or there could be something in your brain that causes your heart to stutter.
Hmm.
But all that's internal. It's not. I think it's bad thinking to say something that happened to me internally is proof of my experience.
Mm,
I think that's just not good thinking.
yeah, I think that's fair. Although I also, I definitely empathize with that position. That's it feels like evidence.
Yeah.
It's a compelling thing to have an experience like they describe. When you feel the presence of God and reading the Book of Mormon and you're overwhelmed with this feeling. And that's, I mean, you're right. It is bad thinking to rely on that as evidence. It shouldn't
Right.
count as evidence, but it sure acts like evidence. That's all, just from personal
I
experience.
think personal experience is fine after the evidence. But I think
Right,
the evidence, the provable part, the logically necessary part should be above that.
right. And we should test things. Um, we should question things. We should question personal experience because, like you said, it can be mistaken. Um,
Yeah, I could summate what you just said as test all things received in the Spirit. Oh my gosh, that's in the Bible. I remember that now.
That is. Yeah, test that.
Coincidentally, it happens to already be there.
Right.
It's amazing.
That's awesome. You know, I need to read the Bible more too. I need to read native spiritual stuff and the Bible more. I need to read all that
I
stuff.
tell you what, just go ahead and spend all of your time neglecting your health and your family and your responsibilities and study. Why not just let Jesus do it? How about that?
Jesus got take the wheel, Jesus.
I mean, after all, Jesus, in the story of Job, he loses all of his stuff. Children, property, everything.
Yeah.
He's reduced down to the lowest that he can be reduced, and it is him that will receive all the great rewards. And I'm okay with that. He does a lot. He earns it. That's fine. So that I think everyone else just needs to live a decent life, and that's all that's being. I mean, when the Sanhedrin or Pharisees question Christ about the commandments, he speaks to a large general audience in his reply. And they make it real obvious he's speaking to multiple people simultaneously. So it's not a message for Christ, and it's clear. It doesn't say you singular. It doesn't say that anywhere in there. And he says 2 commandments, just 2 things.
Right.
Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, soul, spirit, body, everything, every way that you can. Love thy neighbor as thyself. This covers all the commandments.
Right.
So there's 613 laws for Christ and his army, and there's 2 for you. That's it. I think most of us can follow those 2 and believe it's right.
Yeah.
Except for maybe, the atheist doesn't believe the God part.
Right.
Which is fine, but, be good to your fellow man.
It's an interesting, it occurs to me that there's almost like a logical necessity to loving God in that way when you're talking about God as a set of principles that embody what love even is. To love God
I think
your
so.
heart and mind and spirit and soul and all that. That is how you love God. That's just necessarily, that's describing God.
That's what I'm saying.
But
yeah.
loving my neighbor as myself, I'm not sure I follow that law. I try to, but I don't know. I definitely don't. I mean, there's a fellow across the street that I have conflict with. I don't like him interacting with my children. I wouldn't help him if he fell on hard times, or maybe I would. I'm just saying, I don't have fond feelings for him.
Right.
I don't know, but I try to be loving. Hey, Wesley.
Peace and respect, Wesley Curry.
I still get paid because I'm on salary.
You finally got up to a salary position. You just get paid if you work or not. But eventually they'll fire you if you go long enough without doing everything. They'll fire you. Yeah,
That's true.
It's going to take more than one day, but you'll get fired.
Well. Anyway, good talk, Richard. That's
Thank you.
Gave me a lot to ponder again. I like interacting with you. I really do.
I like interacting with you.
Yeah.
So I think that what you said in summation needs some attention, and it should be given attention. So I'm going to do that before we close up.
All right.
And we'll close the show that way. The biblical description of God to the masses is not the Father, but the 7 spirits. And those 7 spirits, whether I can't prove they are, because it's hard to prove that kind of thing. I can't prove they are the perfect set for humans to interact with each other. I can't prove that. Mm-hmm. But it looks like if they're not spot on, they're real close. Mm-hmm. They're at least real close. If you can personally argue that wisdom, knowledge, counsel, understanding, fear, power, and conservation are not important in your society, I'm not going to believe you first of all. I think they're very, very important. They might be the most important things. Like, you can't have knowledge without truth, because then it's anti-knowledge. It's an untruth, right? So then accepting truth is accepting the reality, is accepting of God. And if you accept truth like Mac is not me, it's just a truth, well, then I shouldn't expect Mac to be me, and that would be wisdom. And if I have wisdom about Mac being different than me, then I should accept that Mac is not me, and I should act appropriately to that. That would be wisdom. I should put it into action. And I shouldn't be disappointed if Mac is not me. And I shouldn't be judgmental when Mac is not me.
Right.
Like, those things don't make sense in reality. And when you expect someone else to be you, you'll be disappointed. And when that happens enough, you'll be angry. And all of it based on your lack of wisdom. All of it. In fact, if you're unhappy, it's because you're unwise. You have not accepted truths. Please go accept those truths. And then you'll leave room in your life for happiness. Just by accepting what is, whether you like it or not.
Right.
You don't have to like what is. You only have to accept what is.
Right.
That's all.
All right, well, let's go love some neighbors.
That sounds like a grand idea. Let's do that. Thanks a lot for your time, Mac. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Back at you. Peace.
To everyone, I want you to know I truly look forward to the day that we're all great friends. And by that I mean in heaven. And I think you will be. Till next time.